Today our lessons are calling on us to keep our perspective, to keep our attitudes about wealth and profit and this world and the next in their proper perspective. To begin with, the prophet Amos is a ardent champion of the underdog and very much aware of and announcing God's issues and demands for justice when it comes to fair play, honesty. And in this particular passage, he's hitting very squarely what he sees as common practices of cheating in business and marketplace. Just to give the story a little bit of more explanation, an ephah is a standard unit of measure for grain, so it would be like a bushel. And in this case specifically, it's a little bit bigger than the typical bushel. We talk about bushels of wheat or bushels of barley or whatever the case may be. The commentary here in the passage that we're going to make the ephah small is basically we're going to construct our measuring device so that people aren't getting as much as they think they are for their money. The same issue with the balance or the scale. It's an ancient weighing device, and of course, like anything, if you skew it one way or the other, you can cheat the customer, and that's the issue at hand here, is the dishonest practice. And most importantly, Amos is not only condemning this, but also a special emphasis on the cheating of those who are most vulnerable and most unable to stand up for themselves and demand the justice that's due them, the poor, the weak, and the sick, and so on and so forth. In our second lesson, the letter to Timothy is one of those letters of Paul. You guys are going to have great fun with Bible study. This is one of those letters of Paul that's referred to as disputed. Scholars are pretty confident that Paul didn't write this particular letter or dictate it himself, and that's because the writing style and the vocabulary are very different from what we see in the letters that we can be very confident did come from Paul. Some scholars will date this as late as the 2nd century. Others will date it earlier in the mid-60s and will assert that the main themes came from Paul, whereas the details in the letter were worked out by some students of his. It was a common practice in that second generation of Christian leadership to cast one's writings in the voice of one's teacher. So much of the New Testament, like Matthew and the letters of Peter and James, are probably written in that second generation, attributing things to the teacher from which they learned their Christian way. And so this is not any kind of subterfuge. This is giving honor to the past, giving claim to the school of Christian teaching that I come from as I present this letter. The custom will change as that generation moves on and the third generation takes up. That's getting way off into the weeds now for us. The point, however, of the letter and its message is completely valid for our Christian lives throughout antiquity and in our very day. To pray for civic leadership, to pray for wise decisions to be made. And I think in our own day and age where there is the kind of political tension we have and the kind of sometimes just plain acrimony going on, it's important for us to hear this call to that virtue. However we may dislike any given elected official, praying for God's grace to be with them, for them to make wise decisions on behalf of our nation, to do the things and lead the country in a way that is good for the people, is the virtuous thing to do, to pray for those things. And so this is a calling to kind to step up to the plate, so to speak, and to pray on a different level and not let antagonisms get in the way of our virtuous lives. Our gospel story comes back to the first theme, but Jesus, of course, always takes his own unique way of presenting it. The parable is one I've always loved. The shrewd manager, the underhanded manager who becomes the example for Christians because Jesus wants to call us to step beyond a naive living of the faith. But as Jesus goes from telling the parable to driving home a further message about not getting fixated on wealth in this world, it starts to get confusing and convoluted. I've explained in the past that biblical translators have a significant challenge before them. If you speak more than one language, you know that you can't translate somebody's writing or somebody's speech word for word because it's not going to come across to the other language. Words have different nuances in different languages. Expressions and euphemisms have different meanings in different cultures. And so the translator has to work at translating the speaker's intent rather than just word for word, or the message can go all over the place. With biblical languages that are no longer even actively spoken, coming from cultures that are 2,000 years old or 3,000 years old, it can be even more convoluted and tricky trying to get the message across. Some biblical translators will work towards being as close as possible to the original text, which of course means the modern English is hard for us to read. Others will try to translate it in a way that makes it very easy to read, but then of course, when we start trying to tease out the nuances, sometimes that gets lost. Because again, concepts that exist in our language didn't exist back in that day, and their perspective on things are different than ours. This particular passage in the Gospel where Jesus is talking about use dishonest wealth to make friends for yourself is not a teaching to go out and be crooked and underhanded in your business dealings so that you can make friends. And I'd like to share with you the way it's translated in the New English Bible, because they did a much smoother job of getting it into modern English. So I say to you, use your worldly wealth to win friends for yourselves, so that when money is a thing of the past, you may be received into an eternal home. The one who can be trusted in little things can be trusted also in great. And the one who is dishonest with little things is dishonest also in great things. If then you have not proved trustworthy with the wealth of this world, who will trust you with wealth that is real? And if you have proved untrustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters. For either the servant will hate the first and love the second, or will be devoted to the first and think nothing of the second. You cannot serve God and money. To me, that makes it a lot clearer. Earthly wealth, earthly success, and we can lump in that conversation all of the other things that we count as God's blessings in our lives, our talent, our intelligence, our abilities, our skills, our opportunities, the currency of this world, so to speak, is to be used not simply for this world, but for the sake of the next. To build up for us, as he says in other places in the Gospels, treasures in heaven. We have to live in a material world. This is where God has placed us. And that requires hard work, diligence, earning an income to support ourselves and family. But we have to be very cautious that we don't get so fixated on those necessities that they become the only thing that's important to us. We don't get so fixated on status and accomplishment that we lose track of our real purpose in life. The things that last, the wealth that's, quote, real, is the clarity and care with which we love God and love our neighbor, lived out concretely in how we use all of the other blessings we receive in this life. My brothers and sisters, today let's remind ourselves to keep that virtuous, spiritual, concrete balance in our lives. That we use the things of this world as an expression of our love of God and our love of neighbor. Those things we can take with us when we leave this realm. Those things do go with us into the life of God's household in heaven.